Welcome to Bonus Features, a podcast where we dive into the crazy, unexpected, and interesting details that we didn't have time to talk about on Sunday. When you get into God's Word gets into you. We want to help you get into the Bible, understand the Bible, and apply the Bible, and our hope is that Bonus Features will do just that. Well, today we are joined by Pastor Jeff.
Great to be here.
We have AJ. You made it back. You
Hey,
really nailed it.
Thanks for
time.
having me. Jokes already. All right.
Who knew he would get an invite back? This is so good.
And then we
I'm just as surprised as you guys are.
Yeah.
So.
And then we have Joan standing in for our resident nerd here.
Joan
How are you
Mitchell
doing
in the
today?
house.
Thank you.
You have big shoes to fill.
I do.
Yes, you do.
And I've not been called a nerd before, so I love it.
Yes.
You love it.
Well,
Like
if
it.
anybody, if we knew, we're like, who's the expert on
Yeah.
Ruth? We're like, Joan Mitchell.
Nobody knows Ruth better.
That's right.
It'd be fun to meet her one day.
Yes.
We got a lot of questions.
And then I am clearly not Caroline Baldwin. My name is Abby, and I'm standing in for her today because we have two people from this table that are on a mission trip to
Yes.
Uganda. So be praying for them, supporting them from here. We're really excited for what they're going to do over there.
Go Team Uganda.
Yeah. So guys, we're binging Ruth today.
Yes, we
It's
are.
not really much to binge. It's only 4 chapters,
So
right?
this feels a little weird because typically, like, everyone is sitting down to talk about like 30 chapters, and today we've just got 4.
4. Yeah, this will be the shortest podcast ever, right?
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 We'll see about that.
I thought
right,
that,
guys?
real quick. So when I was prepping for this message, I thought, okay, finally, it's just a couple. It's 4 chapters, and it's not a bunch of sub stories. And next thing you know, I had like over 8 pages of notes going in. Sunday morning, I'm cutting content because I'm just thinking, how in the world am I going to get through all this? So
Genesis 50 chapters, 40-minute message. Ruth 4 chapters, 45
Look,
minutes.
I told you part 1, you cannot muzzle the ox while he treads out the grain. And the ox was working hard on Sunday. So
It's a lot of grain.
Yes.
A lot of grain.
That's incredible. I
a lot of
love
grain,
it.
but let's do this.
Yeah, man. Joan,
All
do you
right.
want to take us through the major moments of Ruth?
I do. First of all, I love the idea that this was an oral tradition of culture where they told stories by the campfire. I always think that when I think of Ruth, I think someone just passed this down at the campfire. And that's why sometimes we feel like we get a little of information before even Ruth knows it.
Which is so, just for a second on that, because I mean, here we are, we're reading Bibles on our iPhones,
Yeah.
which clearly they didn't have. You know, we've got Bible bundles and we've got websites with the Bible
Commentaries.
Yeah, they
and-
didn't run down to Lifeway Christian Bookstore to pick up, a copy of the Old Testament or anything. I mean, it was literally generation to generation sitting down and telling the stories over and over and over, which is how it was passed on. And so I appreciate you bringing that up because I think one of the biggest things is we got to get out of our 21st century, mentality and kind of crawl into their mindset. So that's cool.
I love that. So the first thing we see is that this happened during the first half of the Judges, like Pastor preached about that last week. And we see a couple that is moving from Bethlehem, the place of bread. Bethlehem is actually known
Literally what it
as
means.
the house of bread. And they're moving out of God's provision. And I love that you showed a map because it was a long way, not just to leave the promised land. That was a long way to go. And they took their 2 sons with them, and Elimelech, Naomi, and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, or something like that. And their names mean sick and pining, which makes me wonder.
Way of
Wait a second.
Makes me wonder, why does a mom name her children that? And second, maybe they were sickly, and maybe that's why they died.
Could be. I don't know. You're wondering, like, sometimes like what came first, like the chicken or the egg? Was it like, this is a sickly kid, we're gonna name him Sickly?
Yeah.
Because he's over there pining all the time, or do they grow into the
It
name?
exactly is pining. Piney.
I mean, you've got AJ. You've got a strong name. Aaron, Matthew, Johnson. There's probably the most
Nice.
biblical names
Right.
that could all be put together.
Yeah.
And you look at how you've grown into it.
Never heard a thing about God growing up. Very important that I had a biblical name to my parents, but
That's awesome.
Okay, so their names, we got that.
So their names. Yep. We saw that they were married. And then we saw that they moved to Moab. So I wanted to bring up, what's the big deal about Moab?
Right.
Right?
Why? Yeah. Why was this? Why was this like a big no? Do you guys remember? What was the deal about Moab?
So back in Genesis 19, it talks about, remember the story of Lot. 2 angels are going to go and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham says, well, if there's 50 righteous, will you do it? And he says, well, no, not for 50. And then he goes, 40. Oh, Lord, I'm sorry, for 30. And he brings it all the way down to 10. He's like, all right, for 10, I won't destroy the town. So he goes down. We all know it ends up getting destroyed. And then Mrs. Lot looks back, right? Turns into a pillar of salt. Yep. And then her 2 sons, the 2 daughters, go with the father.
Right. Cringe the Bible moment here.
This is going to be cringe. They're supposed to go to the far mountain, and he says, oh, I can't go that far. Can I just go to the small mountain? And they go there, and then we know the story. And Genesis, well, if we don't know the story, it is a cringy one. The 2 daughters say, no men are around. Let's get our dad drunk and sleep with them. Yeah. And they both do, and they both become pregnant.
Got to repopulate the earth, you know?
No. Yes, and they both have sons, and one's name is Moab, the father of the Moabites.
And the other, quick quiz, pop quiz, anybody?
AJ, you want to take this one?
The Ammonites.
Yes.
Got it.
2 of Israel's greatest enemies. So it was a big deal that they were going back into this. They weren't just backtracking, like you said. They were
Absolutely.
way backtracking.
Nope, that's good. Thank you for taking us back to what a wonderful memory from Genesis.
That's a cringy one.
That's a throwback episode.
That was one of those when we were talking about Genesis. It was like, how honest can we get here?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I like when Pastor Kevin said, "I bet you didn't hear that story when your dad read you a bedtime story."
Tell me that story about Lot and his daughters. Like, no.
That's we skipped that one.
So they're heading to Moab. Yeah.
So then
Just gonna move on.
Going back to Moab.
I wanted to bring up the fact that when they're getting ready to go back, they both at first are like, "Yeah, we're going to go back with you," and then she says, well, if I had a son tonight, if I got married even today and had a child tonight, would you wait for him? So in the culture, if your husband died, you had to marry a relative as the kinsman redeemer to redeem the property. So she had no more sons. The rightful thing for them to do was to wait for her to have another son, but that wasn't going to happen. So culturally, that's a little cringy too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this whole beginning part, we're just skipping ahead to cringe the Bible.
We're getting back.
Which is funny because I thought Ruth was there's not a whole lot of cringe in Ruth, but there's cringe all through the Bible.
Well, yeah.
So it's kind of funny. Like before I was a Christian, I had certain thoughts about what that life meant, and judgmental things that are passed around. So you get this idea for what the Christian life looks like. So after saying yes to Jesus, I start reading the Bible from Genesis on, and so like. People would be like, I'm like, oh, well, I started reading the Bible. They say, oh, what'd you read? And I'm like, well, those people were not doing good things. And they were not doing, I'm like, it's just a bunch of messed up people right off the bat.
No perfect people allowed.
So, so yeah, you continue in it. No matter how many books into the Bible we get, we're still going to see some cringe stuff, even in Ruth.
Yeah, so your 5, I think I made the comment, is like the most depressing first 5 verses of the Bible.
Yes.
They leave the promised land, get to Moab, place that they're not supposed to be. Her husband dies. We don't really know why. 10 years, the boys end up marrying, and best we can guess, maybe, in the absence of father's influence, they marry the Moabite women. 10 years pass by, they die. We don't exactly know why.
Did they die at the same time? Like, it doesn't really give us a
just
clue.
I don't know.
Brutal. I mean, to lose your husband and then to lose your 2 sons, that's hard. That's tough. Naomi was really dealt a bitter hand, which we'll get into. But
well, I thought so. Something that I thought was just neat in the beginning, kind of right where you left us off, Joan, was that in verse 6 of chapter 1, when it talked about when Naomi heard in Moab. So the words made it to Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people, which is, if you go back to what we learned in Judges, that's what kept happening. It was like disobedience led to disaster, which caused people to cry out to God, which led to his deliverance. And here we don't know exactly what's transpiring. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, but God is beginning to provide because that's what he does. That's who he is. No matter how much we run and rebel, and he's faithful. And so amidst a faithless Israel, God is still faithful, and he's beginning to provide. And they catch word all the way in Moab, like, hey, they got bread back in the house
what
of
does
bread.
that look like?
Got bread.
Pigeon carrier? Like, how, like
Yeah.
how is the word of the Lord going out to the people in the field in Moab? Like,
That's a great question.
That's a good question. The Holy Spirit? Question mark? I don't know.
yeah, question.
I'm assuming that some of the traders from
Yeah.
the trade route, somehow word is passing. But anyway, to me, it was that simple line, the Lord had come to the aid of his people.
Yeah.
Like, they're still his people. And, he provides. He is a provider.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
So good. So in verse 16 of chapter 1, where that famous "Don't urge me to leave you," a lot of people have that in their wedding vows. You might have all had
Your
that.
people will be my people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And your God will be my God. And we see that she's taken on Naomi's God, which is a big thing I want to talk about. But I want to also talk about Ruth. Her name means friend. And Orpah, her name means stiff neck, which if you look that back up in
She's a
Stiff-necked
chiropractor.
woman.
that's right. Back
I
in,
get that way all the time after too much CrossFit.
she was CrossFitting, just saying. But she would not, stiff neck meant she would not bow her head to the God of Israel, where Ruth did.
That's
So
good.
it's kind of a picture of two people, those that are following the Lord and those that are going to turn their back and do their own thing.
And
which is
little
very
known
interesting.
fact about Orpah. So who wants to
Orpah.
tell us about Orpah
Yeah,
real quick?
yeah.
AJ, tell us
So-
about Orpah.
Well, so rumor has it that Oprah was named Orpah. And I don't know if it was a mispronunciation or a misspelling on the birth certificate, but we've got one of the most famous names to our generation, Oprah.
Well, and to verify that, I am on AmericanNamesSociety.org's website.
Well, that's got to be official then.
And they say in 2008, Winfrey explained her family, unfamiliar with the name, pronounced and spelled it Oprah from her infancy, though it remains Orpah on her birth certificate.
Wow.
There you go.
So they decided to name their child Stiff Neck.
Stiff neck. Look, I'm gonna tell you, I got
Interesting.
3 kids, and we knew pretty early on my daughter was gonna be stubborn. Like we could have
Oh,
called
yeah.
her Orpah, and it would have fit. So, you get it, Kenley. I love you, but you are a little Orpah.
It's funny. Do you think they waited a little while before naming the children to determine what their personality was like? And like, oh, no, you're definitely an Orpah.
Or did they name him and then they lived up to their
Yeah.
name?
Right.
Well, I feel like that's something that's super significant in scripture anyway, of like a lot of times people were named things and like what the name meant is what they took on. And I've
yeah.
even noticed that with like people that I know, like my name means source of joy and I'm your resident Enneagram 7.
Look at this, are literally our
So,
source of
2
joy.
7s.
Thank you. Are you a 7?
Predestined
Oh my gosh,
to
we're so
be.
fun.
My name Jeffrey means peaceful,
And you're a 9?
and I am a 9.
Okay.
And
there you
so,
go.
So wait, let's put this together. If we take your last name, Kapusta, then you
yeah,
are
which means I'm a
peaceful
peaceful
cabbage.
Peaceful cabbage. Absolutely. And I can't think of, something that would describe me better.
Cabbage is so peaceful.
Cabbage? Wait, are we saying
Tranquil.
cabin or cabbage?
Cabbage. Kapusta. Yeah, if you go to a Polish restaurant, they'll have fried kapusta on the menu. Yeah, you can have it like the OG Cabbage Patch Kid right here.
Well, I mean, that's more interesting. My
Cabbage
last
Patch,
name
huh?
is.
Little Cabbage Patch. Little Cabbage Patch. Those of you that are only listening,
You forgot this is a video podcast as well, didn't you?
that's for the YouTubers out there. I was doing the Cabbage Patch. So
So
there's
yeah,
that.
hey, at least yours is interesting. Like the story of my last name. What's that mean? Son of John.
Son of John.
Yeah.
That's
Pretty-
incredible. I love that.
Incredible.
So anyway,
Well, now I need to know what Joan means.
oh yeah.
It means John. It means God is gracious. Yeah.
I really
It's
want
the
to name her
female
John, but I just
version
feel like
of-
that's too masculine.
Oh man.
about
Wait,
Joan?
what's her middle name?
It's Marie, which is Mara.
Isn't that sea of
Isn't
bitterness?
that crazy?
okay.
Yes.
Oh,
So
wow.
I dropped that when I got married and kept Telecha, which is my maiden name.
Okay.
Okay.
All
All right.
right.
All right. I like it.
So let's talk about Mara.
Yes.
Because Mara means everyone, if this was a storytelling community, would have known that about the bitter waters of Mara back in the story of Moses. So when Naomi says, "Don't call me Naomi," which means pleasant. Call me Mara, because I'm not feeling pleasant right now. The Lord has gone out against me. My husband's died. My boys have died. I'm coming back with, like Pastor said on Sunday, with a Moabite
Right.
daughter-in-law. Yikes.
Yeah, which is almost like she's like, I'm coming back empty. It's almost like worse than empty.
It's on the
And
negative.
let's talk about this for just a second. So she's really pinning the blame on God.
Yeah.
And what's your guys' take on that? I mean, she's like, so she literally says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. The Lord has afflicted me. The Lord has brought misfortune.
Lord has come against
upon me. What do you guys make of that? Do you think that's just her perception of it?
You know, I was reading some stuff that even suggested that Naomi was recognizing the sovereignty of God when she said that, of like, I'm recognizing that I'm not in control of this. Like, this is the Lord that's doing it. And they even went so far to say that it was almost a trusting statement, which is interesting to me. And it kind of like turns that on its head a little bit. But I would almost suggest that she could have been bitter and angry and turned away from God, but she still repented, which had a major impact on this story, on Ruth. And like, we can talk about that too, of just her willingness to turn away and repent, even like feeling like the Lord has dealt her a bitter hand. I mean, that's wild, because I know for me, if I'm angry at God, the last thing I want to do is turn to him.
Right. I just think about, you know, we know so many people that have gone through hurt and grief, and one of our initial responses is, God, why?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that one of the biggest, you know, issues or maybe hurdles that people have when it comes to faith, is if God is all powerful and all knowing and compassionate, then why did this happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? And I think a lot of times, if we're just being honest, our initial reaction to tragedy is we turn to God, even if we've ignored him, because obviously, you know, it was a total ignoring of God and his instructions to go to Moab. But now it's, you know, I think she's just being honest. I think she's being really honest. And I don't think that it talks, you know, I read this one commentary that said that she wasn't bitter against God because she was returning and repenting and going back towards him. She just was bearing her soul and being honest. And I think that sometimes people feel like, well, I don't know if I could say that to God. And I'm like, if you haven't just laid into God ever, then you ought to try it sometime. He can handle it. I've told the story many times about 4 years into planting the church, where I just felt like on all fronts I was facing conflict. We weren't growing. It was the first time I was really dealing with leadership challenges. I had family challenges. And I just remember thinking, God, if this is what you called me to, you can take it and shove it. And when I went home, I went in the closet, shut the door, and I just kind of laid into God. I quit that day. And I felt like God could take every bit of my, you know, temper, my tantrum, and I think he's big enough to handle that. I mean, if you're thinking it, why not just say it to him? And I feel like she's just being really honest, which I wanted to give people permission to be honest with God. Yeah. But notice that she was turning back to him in her honesty. Yeah. So
yelling at him's better than trying to wrestle with him. You know what happens then. You walk away with a limp.
Throw out a hip.
Throw a hip.
I wonder too if it also was her identity was gone. You know, she was somebody's wife, gone. Somebody's mom, gone. You know, an Israelite, she really wasn't practicing like an Israelite.
Yeah.
Everything that people would have known, especially about a woman, because they were so low in society, that everything was stripped from her.
Yeah, she's like coming back bankrupt, basically.
But it's just so cool that, like, she says, call me Mara. And we've talked about this before we even started, but that scripture never calls her Mara. Like, the people never continue to call her Mara. She stays Naomi. And it's even more proof that God wasn't done yet. Like, he was still working. She just couldn't see his hand.
Which I think is a great way of reminding people, like, don't put a label on something. I think one of the struggles is we want to define the rest of our life based on our current circumstances. And we have the luxury of reading 4 chapters in a matter of minutes. But she's got to live it out. And so I think a lot of people are rushing to conclusions about their life based upon a tragedy, circumstances, the promotion didn't happen. You know, I asked her to marry me. She said no. My spouse walked away. We lost someone close to us. Just be careful that you don't label the rest of your life based on the current circumstances, because the story gets better. And I would tell people your story's going to get better too. God's not done with you. So that was really cool. Thank you for pulling that out.
That's good. No,
and talking about that, the chapter ends. It's all terrible, 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 terrible. And then it says it's the beginning of barley harvest. And there's like that little spark of hope, like you were saying.
Right. Yeah. Well, and we've come off of a famine. They have food. The harvest is coming. So, yeah, this is good. And the timing is... is it a coincidence that they happen to show up at the time of barley harvest, or is this just God positioning the pieces to be where they need to be? Right moment, right time. I tend to give him the credit.
Yeah. That's perfect timing to say that, because as we jump into chapter 2, that's exactly what happened. Ruth finds herself in Boaz's field. This is one of those things where I feel like it's kind of the story at the campfire where they're like, So we had a kinsman redeemer named Boaz, but it's like she doesn't know that yet. And she happens to find herself, like you said, the Lord happens to find herself in Boaz's field. And it says it was a fortuitous chance that she was there in his field. But like you said, the Lord had already known that, had already lined that up.
Yeah. Can we just talk about the kinsman redeemer for like a quick second?
Yeah.
Because I was doing a tiny little bit of research, and I found that the kinsman redeemer is also the blood avenger, which basically means that like if someone had murdered a member of your family, then the kinsman redeemer would murder the murderer. And the picture in my head of the blood avenger, like being the title of Boaz or like someone in your family is just really dope to me. And I don't have anything to say other than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that I want to take on anybody else as my responsibility, but I would like to be a blood avenger. If I can get that,
Yes.
you know.
Now, what if the one that you're supposed to avenge against is like someone huge, you know? Like, hey,
like they do
it
CrossFit.
is now my responsibility to go take
I'm
you
gonna let this one slide. This is a warning.
This is your warning.
Don't do that again.
But even thinking about like you made the comparison yesterday of like Jesus to Boaz, like Boaz is a foreshadowing of Jesus, and thinking about him in that context of the blood avenger, I'm like, we should just call Jesus the blood avenger because it's just really cool.
Blood Avenger.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't know that makes people want to come to him quite as.
That's like the, you know, growing up, it's like, have you been washed in the blood?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know that I really.
What does that mean?
I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's in Boaz's field.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's in his. And one thing. What I liked about the fact that she's in his field, she could have easily just sat around and been like, okay, I'm trusting God, and just sat at home, but she didn't. She had a work ethic. She's obviously a hard worker because they noticed she's been here. She's hustling. She's working hard. I think there's something about not just being lazy. Like having faith doesn't give you permission to be lazy. Like do what you can.
Yeah.
Trust God with what you can't. And I like to think, so when she said, you know, your people will be my people and your God will be my God, I like to think that Naomi probably took the whole journey from Moab back to Bethlehem to educate her daughter-in-law about the ways of God, the story of God, the provision of God, which is probably where she started learning about, you know, hey, go to the fields to glean. So anyway, I think that she's walking out her faith that is so new, but she's in there and she's hustling.
Well, it must have been a rough trip because obviously Naomi was bitter at this point. And so for Ruth to make the decision to stay with her must have been like, because let's be honest, we don't like to be around people that are killjoys and no fun. And obviously she was going through the ringer. So I think even the fact that Ruth was like, no, I'm going to stay, I'm going to serve, probably not the decision I would have made at that point. And so even more to be commended for.
Yeah, that brings up a good point of Ruth's character. Even in terms of like the way that she approaches like gleaning from the field. Like she says please, she asks. We see that she's really kind and hardworking. And I think that's a lot of what gets her noticed and what puts her in the position to even be where she is, which is really cool. Like being in the field and stewarding that well.
And then she does, I mean, you guys were talking about hardworking. Then she does get noticed by Boaz. You know, they have an encounter. And what does she do? She goes back to the field to work.
Right.
Like, she's like, all right. Like, you know, even though she's shown some favor.
She got to do work.
She's like right back to it.
Work.
There's the song.
Work. I got songs.
Yes.
They just come to me. They just come to me.
Got songs in my heart.
Pastor had already brought up the fact of who Boaz's mama was.
Did I?
Yes, it was Rahab.
Okay, there we go.
So that's
like totally
really important because when that's the ending of the story is when you find out that Rahab, the prostitute, is Boaz's mom. So when Boaz notices Ruth as a foreigner in his field, his mama was a foreigner to Israel. That is so beautiful to me that he recognized somebody's different. My mama was different, and we've loved her. So when he says in verse 12, can you use anybody have it in
Verse 12. Verse 12, he says, may the Lord
2:12.
repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come to take refuge. Is that the one you're looking for?
So that's what he's saying, because he saw his mom come under the Lord's wing too, and the protection of how Israel had built up their family. And now he's a wealthy man, and he sees this foreigner in his field. So I think that he was very cued in. Wait a minute, this is somebody different. She looks different. And then she even says, you took notice of me, and I'm a foreigner. Mm-hmm. And that's really just such a sweet line, I feel like.
Yeah, and then he invited her to dinner.
Yeah.
Got a meal out of it.
Right? And she got leftovers. This is the first time leftovers is mentioned in the Bible.
We see it, yeah. Brings
so
it home.
She brings leftovers home.
You know, Naomi's just sitting at home like, where is she? She's been out forever.
There's she.
I bought you a snack. But it says that when she went home that Boaz took all that grain, an ephah, which is 22 liters. So it's like carrying 10 2-liter Cokes on your back. Like
So she's strong.
Are you telling me that Ruth did CrossFit?
Ruth did CrossFit.
She was a CrossFitter. She is the initial CrossFit woman in the Bible.
We should make a workout called Ruth, and we figure out how much that is, and you got to carry it however far.
That's
gonna,
some heavy grain. That's
I
some
feel
heavy
like
grain.
I feel like
you're gonna look it
I'm
up.
gonna Google.
I'm not going to do it, but I support the idea, you know?
So it's interesting because Boaz says, stay by my women in the field. And then when she goes home to Naomi later in verse 21, she tells Naomi that Boaz told her to stay by the men in her field. And
I
that
didn't
is
catch
not
that.
the truth.
Okay.
I catch that.
Yeah, okay.
So I want to bring up the fact that the Bible always shows a character flaw, which is hard for us, but it's also good for us because we know we can never be a Ruth. But I like this when Naomi, who's the picture of the Holy Spirit in this story, says, no, stay with the women. And then Ruth obeys. And I think that's a big deal. Because later he says, you could have gone after other men, younger, richer, but you didn't. She obeyed Naomi.
Yeah, we're given the idea that Boaz is a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So, interesting. No, I totally missed that.
Yeah. I wonder why. I want to know why.
Resident expert and nerd. I told you guys. You had big shoes to fill, but you're doing it.
You're doing it. You're crushing it.
Yeah, boom. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
All right. Well, I'll run to BHQ super fast.
And then it says at the end of chapter 2 that she was there for 2 harvests. So we wonder how long is 2 harvests. But I just feel like it was long enough because Naomi had watched her provide for her for 2 harvests. That's 2 plantings. That's a long time.
Yeah. I wonder, do we know how long, like approximately that is?
I want to say it was, I wanted to say,
I'm not familiar with barley harvests,
yeah,
how frequently and how long the harvest takes.
4 months to do one.
Okay.
That might not be right.
So upwards of 8 to 12 months.
Okay.
At the least.
Yeah, I was just curious because, I'm sure you feel this, but I don't know if you guys relate to this, but we did a lot of Bible studies on Ruth growing up.
You have?
You know,
I'm sure y'all have,
guys
right?
Haven't? You and AJ haven't?
I didn't do any Bible studies.
So you don't count.
So yeah. Most women's Bible studies, you got 2 options. You can choose between Ruth and Esther. Which one? Which, by the way, I was so I brought my handy dandy Talk Through the Bible Bruce Wilkerson commentary, and they do this. Put a little pin where we're at. And they do this little comparison between Ruth and Esther.
Oh, nice.
I thought this was kind of interesting. So Ruth is a Gentile woman. Esther is a Jewish woman. Ruth lived among the Jews. Esther lived among the Gentiles. Ruth married a Jewish man in the royal line of David. Esther married a Gentile man who ruled an empire. Ruth is a story of faith and blessing. Esther is a story of faith and blessing. Just kind of the
incredible.
Similar parallels. So basically, if you did a study on Ruth and Esther, you were studying similar, kind of the same stuff.
That's really cool. I love that.
Anyway, different
I'm sad
stories.
that y'all didn't get that. Sorry.
But I also felt like the book of Ruth could also be called the book of Boaz if we wanted to go there. Because really, it's about the kinsman redeemer.
You're just trying to take
Esther could be called the book of Mordecai,
books.
but we'll let you.
We have 2 books, Pastor Jeff. Let us have it.
Well, Judges could have been called Deborah, maybe.
Okay.
Not really.
No, all right, moving on. No, that's awesome. But I bring that up because, I always heard, find you a Boaz. That was always the joke. And so it's really interesting that like they took so much time to like get to know each other. And this is like the book of dating. Wait, oh no.
Yes.
Okay,
We
okay,
have
look.
to.
This,
I felt the look come when you said find you a Boaz.
all right. I opened this on
Do
my
it.
phone,
Do
and
it.
this is maybe across a line.
Do it with
Cross
some
the line.
sass. Do it with some sass.
My Time Hop app told me that 4 years ago today I screenshotted this. Today,
That's
this very
wild.
day.
That's the spirit.
Look how the Lord,
Lord
Lord
prepared you.
orchestrated all of this.
Forgiveness on the front end. This was, I think it was Jensen Franklin that said this, so get mad at him. Says, to all the girls who are in a hurry to have a boyfriend or get married, a piece of biblical advice. Ruth patiently waited for her mate, Boaz. While you're waiting for your Boaz, don't settle for any of his relatives, broke ass, po-ass, lying ass, cheating ass, dumb ass, drunk ass, cheap ass, locked up ass, good for nothing ass, lazy ass, especially a third cousin beating your ass. Wait on your Boaz and make sure he respects your ass.
Are we gonna have to edit that and post?
We might have to. We may
might
need to
not
cut
make
that.
Oh, he felt guilty as he was reading it.
No, I've heard people tell that joke from the platform before, so I think you're fine.
That's a viral clip from a well-known man of God. I mean, you know.
Anyway, I just
okay.
thought it was funny.
Somebody's
okay.
rewinding.
I had
that
let it
and
go, and then when you said that, I was
Sorry.
like,
Well, this whole time I was researching, it's all I could think about, and I was like, I can't be the one, so I'm glad you were the one.
you're welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But no, I mean, it's definitely significant, like in that they took so much time to get to know each other, and that they had relationship. I don't know. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, because she was in his field gleaning all that time, not in anybody else's.
Yeah.
So chapter 3 opens up with Naomi saying, we need to find rest for you, my daughter, which is interesting. People don't think marriage is restful, but
Yep.
you know, that's interesting that she would say that because she's been working so hard. She wants to provide for her, but also find rest. What were you saying about that earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that it was really significant of like what you said, of just that the fact that she called marriage rest, and it's just kind of this confirmation that that's what God wants for marriage biblically, is that it would be restful. So
Right,
yeah.
and it's rest. It's also translates security, and
For a
so
woman, sure.
Yeah.
so looking for that. You know, she's still able to bear children, to have a family again. You know, to keep the family name going. So it's really about trying to figure out that security, that rest, and it's hard to rest if you don't feel secure. So.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So we're in chapter 3. Does anything significant happen in chapter 3, or?
Lots of significant.
yes.
So I titled this "The Awkward Proposal,"
Yes.
the proposal or the awkward proposal, because that's kind of what goes down
That's a
in
movie,
chapter
right?
3. So
And I love the way you said it because she did propose to him.
let's
And
put it
it's
out there.
Naomi's idea.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about the threshing floor or winnowing barley?
So I mean, so we're told that, I mean, mother-in-law is saying tonight he'll be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. And then she's like, so here's what I need you to do. This was my Reba McEntire reference.
Yes.
Here's your one chance, fancy. Don't let me down.
Oh, there
Yeah.
you go.
I
There you
believe
go.
that's how it goes. I think I misquoted
Got
that
it
second
right this time,
service.
yep.
Yeah, so
Redemption.
wash, put on perfume, which is this is just good. I think if you're going to go on a date, this is a good idea. You know,
It's a
wash,
weird date.
perfume,
Wash yourself.
put on something nice, get your best clothes out. You know, imagine she came out and she's like, I don't know, should I wear this or should I wear this? And Naomi's like, okay, let's
It's
get
like
you
a
something.
rom-com montage, you know, what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why I told people at the front of the message, this is a little rom-com, little drama. It's
Yeah.
a relief from the slaughter fest that happened in Judges.
She's getting
So-
all dolled up to sit in the dark, though. It's like,
Well, they had light.
Right.
They had light. But so she continues, go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. Why is that? You think he was getting in good spirits? Little meal, little wine. And then it says when he lies down, note the place where he's lying, go uncover his feet and lie down. He'll tell you what to do. First impressions when you read this, let's just go there. Because in our minds, you're like,
What's going on here?
well, I mean, what do you do with someone's feet? What are you implying here?
I'm down for a good foot rub, good foot massage, a little pedicure. I've only had one in my life, but it was delightful. I'm not sure that's what's going on.
When she's like, get dressed up and go lie by him. Yes, my first first thought is, oh, something's going down. But when she's like, uncover his feet, I'm like,
Okay, so that's where I.
Pastor Jeff, you had a great point about this yesterday. If you want to make this conversation a little less awkward, that would be.
Well, so it sounds like Naomi's saying, "Girl, you got to put it out there,"
Right.
but it's not what she's saying. She's not telling her to do something promiscuous or seductive. It was more cultural. It was something that doesn't make sense to us, but in the context of the day, she is humbly approaching her kinsman redeemer because he did have a legal obligation. And so she could have demanded that legal, but that wasn't the approach. That's not her way. And so, I mean, Joan, you are our resident nerd, resident expert. I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit, but I presented it as she's coming, she's submitting herself, she's humbly presenting and requesting, and in essence saying, "You're my kinsman redeemer. Would you redeem me?" What have you got to add to that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. It's interesting that it happened at the midnight hour because this is her darkest hour. She doesn't know if this is going to happen, you know? So at the midnight hour, she uncovers him or puts the skirt over her and says, "Would you spread your skirt over me?" Which is that same thing going back to when he said in the field, "May the God under whose wing or protection you have come to trust, may he bless you." And this is the blessing right here when he spreads his skirt over top of her. And we were talking earlier about
Keep saying skirt.
Yeah,
like are you talking we got like a kilt here? Or
it's like
a kilt situation.
It's like a little blanket.
All right.
It's like his splanky. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's Boaz's skirt and wing though are interchangeable in Hebrew. It's the same word. And it's also like you were talking about in Israel, if you could bring that up.
Yes. So, well, one of the things that that they had is a prayer shawl that would be draped over them called a kanaf. And when they would extend it out, like when Scripture talks about going into your prayer closet, it wasn't like go into the, they didn't necessarily have a room in their house where all their garments were hanging like we would have a closet.
You referred to your closet earlier when you were talking about having it out with God.
Well, I did. I literally,
quite literal.
Because we have closets. They would take their kanaf, drape it over their head, and it was like being alone with the Lord. And so, but when they would extend it, it looked like wings.
Yeah.
And so we're even told that the Messiah will come with healing in his wings. When you think about the New Testament, when the woman touched the hem of Jesus' garment, she was reaching for the wings. So he's
the tzitzi.
There you go. The tzitzi were the tassels on the ends of the kanaf.
Right.
And so what she's doing is asking, cover me with your wings. Again, security, rest, protection. Just a really neat picture that comes out of that. Joan's got the glasses on. You're going.
Joan's ready.
Glasses on.
She's in nerd mode. Let's go.
Awesome. Boaz accepts her, covers her, brings her into his family, and it's a foreshadowing of Jesus. Obviously, accepts us, covers us, and brings us into his family as well. So pretty cool parallel there.
Yeah, I wanted to read this verse in Exodus because I just think it's not Exodus, Ezekiel 16:8. I just think it's beautiful. So this is what God said. "Later I passed by, and when I looked at you and saw that you were old enough for love, I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your naked body. I gave you my solemn oath and entered into a covenant with you, declares the sovereign Lord, and you became mine." That's the picture of what he did. He was going to cover her and say, "I will make you mine."
Yep.
Yeah. But before he did any of that, he was startled.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it says he was startled. I think it's because his feet were cold.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair feeling. I validate that.
Yeah. No, I just think like some of the details in the Bible, you're like, no, let's put that in there.
But I get that.
We gotta set the tone.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think anyone would be slightly alarmed at a person sleeping at their feet in the middle of the night, but that's just me, I guess.
That's just me.
So
Well, his reaction was sweet, though. He didn't.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, and we're given a little bit more.
Wait.
But what's
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that,
I think
please?
if I woke somebody up in the middle of the night, like.
Oh, you didn't like
Joan's
startled
ready
like
to
he's
fight.
ready
Ready
to
to
throw.
fight.
You're like
Yeah.
you're blowing up.
You coming from a grain?
Well, that's a good point, though, because the reason why he was even on the threshing floor is because it was during a festival and thievery was a problem. So that's why they were even there in the first place, was because they were protecting their grain. So, he might have been on edge
a
for
good
that
bit
reason,
right
too.
there?
It is.
So he says, he blesses her, and he says that, this kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. you've not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. So we're given a little bit more insight into Boaz. We talked about him being a little older. We don't know how much older, but he's saying, you could have gone after any of these young guys, but here you are. And basically, I think he's also, what he's saying in this is she's honoring this kinsman redeemer relationship. Yeah. So then he goes on and says, in that, he says, I will do for you all that you ask. And the people of my town know that you're a woman of noble character. I think it's like, what are you known for? I think that's just an important thing when, especially if we're talking about like relationships. What are we, a lot of times we're drawn to the physical appearance, which I'm not going to minimize that. I think it's probably important to be attracted to the person that you're in a relationship with, but more importantly, what are they known for? I made mention in one of the services, I don't believe I did it in both, but Proverbs 31 says a woman of noble character who can find.
Yeah.
And
she's
that's,
valuable.
that's what I was going to say, because I'm going to bring it up. In the King James, it says that all my people know that you are a virtuous woman. And she is the only woman in all of Scripture called the virtuous woman. Only one. And she was from a multiple God-worshiping Moab. And here she is. They're saying the whole town knows you're a virtuous woman. And that is the Proverbs 31 woman.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that, of even just the original word of it meaning strength, moral strength, good quality, integrity, and virtue. Yeah. And it's the same word that's used to refer to the heroes in the Bible. And so it's saying like her courage, her strength, her virtue, it made her a hero.
Yes.
I just think it's really cool.
Virtuous means war worthy. So when we read the Proverbs 31 woman, it's not like crocheting doilies and stuff. She is she must have been a CrossFitter. She was war worthy. I'm getting more convicted by the minute.
I know. I'm like, do we need to join
This
the CrossFit
episode
gym?
sponsored by.
That's
For
awesome.
all your fitness needs.
For all your fitness needs.
And it's interesting that Boaz knows he's number 2 in line.
Right.
And he tells her, wait. There's a few times in here that she's told, wait. Wait on the floor. Wait for him to redeem. She goes home, and Naomi says, just wait. And that's all a picture of abide, which that's my heart language in the Bible. It means just wait on the Lord.
Oh, that's good.
And then the shoe.
Right. Well, before you get to the shoe,
Okay.
As we wrap up chapter 3, she stays there till morning, and then he's like, you got to get up and go.
You got to get up.
And it's a little interesting. I'd be curious if maybe one of you guys have got a little answer to this, but verse 14, she laid his feet until morning, but got up before anyone else could, or anyone could be recognized. And he said, no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor. Is there a reason that women were not at the threshing floor?
The King James has a very different version of that. And I was hesitant to bring it up because it is a little bit R-rated.
Okay.
It says she rose before they could know each other.
Oh, okay.
So, that means to have sex. So they got up.
Kind of like a do not awaken love before it's time.
Exactly.
It's not the right
Yes.
time. So Ruth comes home to her mother-in-law, verse 16, and Naomi says, how did it go?
Give me all the details.
Don't
me
leave
all of the
anything
details.
out. Tell me. And she gives, a recap. And of course, she had all of this. He gave 6 measures of barley. So she's, comes back. Boaz made sure she never went back empty-handed. And then it's wait, and we'll find out what happens.
I love it because chapter 4 we starts up. Meanwhile, and you're like, I could think that's like immediately
Right.
Boaz was at that gate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yep. So we're in chapter 4, which I will say this about going to the gate. When on the trips that I've done to Israel, there's a place that we go called Tel Dan, and it's I forget how old that town was, but they found kind of the gate. And so you sit at the gate, and they'll have you sit at the gate because that's where the elders of the city, the elders of the town would sit, and any legal business was done at the gate. And so nobody came in or out of the city without going in and out of the gate. But that's where if you had a legal issue or you were going to buy, sell land, something contractual, it happened there at the gate. So it's just kind of cool that we've been there. I know, AJ, you and I have been there. And Joan, you've been there.
No.
You've not been there.
Yet. No.
Okay. Well, we'll have
Not
to
yet.
fix that.
Yes. It's on my bucket list.
Wait, I have a thought, kind of jumping back to maybe why he wouldn't have wanted people to know. As I did in some of my research, I found that it might have been cultural for women that if they laid in the night in the same room with a man, they would automatically be considered a wife. So
Yes.
maybe he was like, no one can know you were here because there's another person in line. And I don't know. It's just a thought. It could be wrong, but
That's good. And
That
some
sounds pretty good.
scholars
That's
believe
pretty-
that when Naomi said
pretty
that,
valid.
that's what she was saying. If you go down there and someone sees you, they're going to assume you are married.
right. So maybe that's why
Yeah.
it was like, okay, well,
Good
no one
point.
can know that you were here.
I like it.
Makes sense.
Actually,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
Anyway, sorry.
You still got to go to the next in line.
Next in line,
Mm-hmm.
the nameless kinsman redeemer.
Yeah, we don't know his name.
Nope.
So they're at the gate. He's waiting. This guy, at some point, he's going to come into the gate, and Boaz kind of recaps the whole situation. He's like, "Hey, so there's, Naomi and Ruth are back, and so if I'm not mistaken, because Elimelech has passed away, the land Naomi is about to lose this inheritance of land, and so it has to be redeemed to stay in the family." Which is what he's presenting to the first in line, which sounds good to the guy. Who doesn't want more land,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It expands your territory. It's a sign of influence. Yeah. So I love that he's like, yeah, I will redeem it. And then I kind of presented it as a package deal.
Yep.
It's like, okay, well, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also get Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. At this, the guardian redeemer said, I can't, okay, I'm out. Then I can't redeem it. And we don't know why. Some speculate that that it would endanger his own estate. So possibly he's already distributed his inheritance to his kids, and now this is gonna complicate things. It could be that he has a wife and this, or
That's
two.
awkward.
Who knows? Because they had several.
That's fun.
And I can't
Gonna
handle
cause
any
some
more
headaches
women in my
for
life.
Maybe
Binge the
she was,
Bible.
you alluded to the fact that she was attractive. Maybe she wasn't all that attractive. He was like, no thanks, I'm going to pass.
Oh man,
I'm going to pass.
that's
You
brutal,
you just
AJ.
changed my whole view of Ruth. I want to believe. I want to believe that she's good looking.
She wasn't known for her charm. She was known for her character. So I'm just saying, who knows?
She's got a great personality.
We're not going back there.
Well, all right, guys, this has been a great episode. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll just say it. We're just coming up with ideas.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's great.
The Bible doesn't give us all the details.
Yeah.
It gives us what we need to know.
And that she was a virtuous woman.
Yeah.
That's what
There
we
we
need to
go.
know.
Yeah, like Joan said, I can't wait to meet her.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are kind of curious. It all makes sense now.
Oh, you must be Ruth. I get it now. I get it.
Oh no. So anyway, he says no.
He says no, and so he's like, all right, then I'll redeem her. And then the deal goes down, and those two, they do something that's pretty unique. They take off their sandal.
Yep.
And they're like, all right, so I give you I give you my sandal, which is a Vans slip-on right now. Hope you're size 11 and a half, which you and I are. We could trade out.
I love how AJ's
What do you got?
not
I want-
AJ's not reaching for
I
the
want
shoe.
your shoe.
Oh,
Oh,
this probably isn't an even
Yeah.
swap.
Is this
For those that can't see, I am trading a Vans slip-on checkerboard.
It's your
for
lucky
an
day.
Off-white Nike blazer. You're not getting this back.
you just want the one shoe?
That's all they did. Yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't swap
All right.
both shoes. One, so I think you're hopeful that it fits.
If the shoe
All right.
fits,
There-
right?
Yeah, that's I feel like AJ wore those shoes to just show him off a little bit. Kind of flex his shoe game. I feel like he was prepared
I
for
don't think
that.
you knew that was happening.
No.
There were some weird things in the Bible.
Yeah.
One of which, swapping of the sandal. They would make covenants and be like, put your hand under my thigh. So AJ, come over here. They'd make commitments. They would do things like that, which
Yeah.
are
Maybe
very
we
weird.
could illustrate that one in the next podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
We'll wait till it comes up in the Bible. We'll get there.
Wait.
We'll get there.
Well, and I think that kind of brings up the point too. Of it's pretty important to know the context of the time, like the culture of the time, because if not, there's a lot in this book that's like, what is going on here? And I think that that's been a common theme, honestly, throughout this series. Of there's just been a lot of like cringe the Bible, question like what's going on here, and so knowing the culture and like even just knowing like that's what they did.
well, let's be honest. Even when you read more and learn about the culture, there's
true.
still some things
Oh,
that you're
yeah.
like,
That's true.
probably not how I would have done it, but
Speaking of that, one more cringy thing. At the end, when they say, may your house be blessed like Tamar. And the story of Tamar is something back in Genesis 38. She had a husband and he died, and she had to marry the brother. And he died. And so now they're waiting for this younger brother to grow up, and she's supposed to marry him. And the dad's like, not happening. So the dad is Judah, and Judah is out one night, and he goes to a prostitute's house. And Tamar, his daughter-in-law, dresses up like a prostitute and gets pregnant by him.
Yeah.
And starts populating the house of Judah. And they're
Tricky
saying,
women.
may you be blessed like her. That's a little cringy.
She's
That's
crafty.
the blessing right there.
Oh, man.
Yes.
So we have an exchange of sandal.
Exchange of
Exchange of sandal. The elders blessed them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And may you be like
Yeah.
Tamar, Rachel, Leah, which we talked about them in the past. And so verse 13 says, Boaz took Ruth. She became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive. She gave birth to a son. And all the women are like, praise the Lord who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer, which is a great, it's just a really neat visual. God has not left you without. That was what really stood out to me when I got to that verse. I talked about on Sunday. We don't need to go into it. May he become famous throughout Israel. He'll renew your life, sustain you in your old age. And then it says, for your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth.
That's a great ending.
That's neat.
It's a great ending.
She took him in her arms.
Yeah.
The people like Naomi has a son. They named him Obed. And then this is kind of where I said that as it closes out, it's kind of like when you watch, like a Marvel movie and the credits run, but everybody stays seated. And then there's an Easter egg at the end. There's a little clip, and we're given an insight. Obed is the father of Jesse, the father of David, and we're given a little picture of where this is going.
Yep.
What a story of redemption in more ways than one.
Can I back up to one verse? Because I feel
Certainly.
like this is so exciting for me. And I felt like the Lord gave me this when I was reading Ruth one day. In verse 4 of chapter 4, I feel like when we're seeing the kinsman redeemer say this to the other kinsman redeemer, that this is what Jesus said to God. If you'll redeem it, then do it. But if you will not tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except for you, and I'm next in line. And Jesus said, I'll redeem them. That is my heart of the book of Ruth. It shows the kinsman redeemer as Jesus.
Yeah, that's really
Word.
good.
So awesome.
Mic drop.
Boom.
That was awesome.
We just binged Ruth.
Yeah,
Yes.
we did.
It happened.
Yeah,
We did the
did.
thing.
We
Yep.
did the thing. So
Done.
we have listeners. We have listeners.
The
I'm really glad.
bingies?
Oh,
Or the
the-
bingers?
The Bingers.
Oh, can it please be the Avengers? I love that.
Yeah, bingers.
I'm neutral. I'm
You're neutral.
Yeah.
All right. You're,
we can call it
you're
that.
Switzerland. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, they have questions. They are
Inquiring
inquiring
minds?
minds.
Wanna know?
Yeah. Do we want to hit some of these?
We'll try.
I've
Yeah.
got questions too.
I do too. Honestly, one of mine is it's really interesting to me that they say Naomi has a son and not Ruth. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I didn't get to it, but I just thought that was really interesting. Of like, I wonder why it wasn't like Ruth has a son, but it was Naomi has a son.
Yeah, a son has been born to Naomi.
Isn't that weird?
So it says Naomi took the child, laid him on her lap, and became his nurse. How's that work out?
That feels like a cringe the Bible.
It's an inquiring mind moment. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's we'll come back to that never.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, one of the questions that we had was just of the custom of marrying relatives, which I think we've touched on a little bit, but even if we just take some time of why that was in place, I would love to know. And so would the inquiring minds.
Great question, Joan.
I'm looking at Pastor. I think it's just to keep everything in the tribe of Israel. That was really important. And clans and different tribes lived in different places, so it would be better for the families to stay closer together and stay in your tribe. Yeah, I really don't know.
Wild. It's really interesting for sure. And then this Pastor?
No, well, I don't have a great answer to that. But I do think because everything was tribal based, and I mean, they're all related somehow. So,
Like Elimelech was Naomi's uncle. I found that. Don't love that.
But a lot of times they call
love
people
that.
uncle that maybe would have been like
Interesting.
a little removed. In Africa, they always said, oh, my brother, and you find out it's like not really the brother.
Right.
It's the cousin's somebody.
Well, and Boaz calls Ruth daughter at
Daughter.
one point, which is a term of endearment.
Mm.
So
So maybe they weren't related. Fingers crossed.
yeah, gonna have to Google that and get back to you.
Yeah.
Because you do see there is some stuff that we see in the Bible that we don't see, you know,
It's true.
we shouldn't see nowadays.
No, there's actually still parts of the U.S. practicing that very thing.
Oh.
Abby's face. Oh.
Love that.
Don't call them kissing cousins for nothing.
Oh, man. AJ, you were just such a joy and
Hi.
a delight on this
Hi.
podcast.
He may not add much, but when he does,
We're having a good time.
We're having a good time.
Next question.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the questions we got, we talked about Mara, that name, what it meant, and then we have talked a lot extensively about like the wings, the garment, the significance of that. But the last question that we have is why go to the threshing floor at night?
we're talking about why would Ruth go to the threshing floor at night?
I think so.
Well, it all goes back to her mother-in-law's plan. Like, let him settle in for the night, and this is when you're gonna, maybe this is when he's alone, or maybe this is when you're able to make this gesture. That's the best I can come up
I
with.
wonder if also, I never thought about this till just now, maybe it was her saying, you're wealthy enough to take on this because he was by his grain pile, which that's just thinking it through, not a biblical answer.
Right. Yeah. A lot of speculation. That's definitely an interesting question. The Bingers have stumped us.
The Avengers.
So
We need more Israel Hebrew culture.
Yeah.
I mean, we do know that he slept by the piles because it was not unusual for gangs of thieves to come steal hard-earned grain.
It was a
Trying to-
happy time. It would have been a time of celebration. He's got all of the grain and all the work's finished. She's cleaned the fields, before the next harvest. Get yourself a wife.
He's a night owl. It's his best time of day. That's all
Yeah.
we know.
Well, and you touched too on like the midnight hour. I think there's just a lot of significance there. So, yeah, I think this is one of those best we can answer is this. Yeah.
I'm trying to find a better one. I'm skimming as we're talking, but
While you're doing that, another interesting thing is chapter 4, verse 17 says the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying a son has been born to Naomi. So practicing group, like the whole community is just coming together, and I think we'll name him.
Yeah.
I think we should put that in practice again.
The whole community just names people.
What do you think? I think he looks like a George. A George he shall be.
A Georgie shall be.
now there are some where that would be good. Be like, I think I might name him this. You're like, that's a dumb name. You're not naming him that. That would save a lot of people some headache.
Yeah, naming by committee here.
Bring it back.
Let's do it. I'm here for that.
Those of you that are expecting, we'd love to name your child.
There is a Boaz available.
Submit your.
Not a lot of Boazes these days, but I think it'd be a great name.
Yeah.
Get back to the Bible.
All in favor of Craig. Say aye.
Aye.
Baby Craig.
Maybe Craig. All right, guys. Well, I feel like this is a great time to jump into Cringe the Bible. Again, we have covered a lot of this. And one of the things that we have, I think, Joan, this might have been you, but I think it's in chapter 1, verse 13 of marrying a baby son. Just of that waiting. It's kind of cringy.
Yeah,
Do you think that was?
cringy.
Like how? Yeah.
Was she just like, being like exaggerating? Was she just like, look?
She does strike me as a touch dramatic.
Look, if I had even if I had a kid, like, because she's like, basically she would have to marry,
Right.
then get pregnant. We're at least 9 months out from having a baby, and then let's just say that this guy could get married off at, we'll give him 16 to 18 years old. I mean, that's a long time to wait just to keep the family name going. So I feel like she's almost like, look, girl, even if I was to have a kid now, so.
Yeah.
I don't know that she was like, hey, listen, so here's an option. All right. Find me a man.
Yeah.
Have a kid. 18 years from now, you just hang tight. Like, I don't feel like it was like, here's a realistic way to do this.
I really hope not, for sure. And I think for me, the biggest one was just his shoe. I mean, if you think about how dirty people's feet were, that is just not my jam.
I know if you know you're
Nope.
going to make a deal, do you wear your bad shoes?
They didn't
Your
have
good
closed-toed shoes on either.
No toes.
They had them Birkenstocks going, you know? That's what they had, some Chacos.
That's
Yeah.
why I was like,
Some leather thongs.
you may have thought
Thong
like,
sandals. That's what they're called, right? Why are you looking at me like that? That's a sandal.
I don't know. Is it? Anyone else
the
confirm?
word serves multiple purposes. Yeah.
Back me up, Joan. She's like, this is my last time on the podcast.
It's just like I have
The
nothing
favorite
left
word
for
for
you.
that is no.
I was fully believing you too. I was ready. I was expectant for that. Well, guys. Yeah. Guys, I think we did it.
We did it?
I think we did it.
Should I give him his shoe back?
Oh,
Would you like to trade back? I really would like the other one. Let's trade our left
There
shoe.
we go.
Let's get
what's the
double
other
deal.
deal? A double deal.
There it is.
there we go. And with that, guys,
We binged Ruth.
Ruth.
Can you binge a 4-chapter Bible?
We did- I don't know. We
book of
did.
the Bible? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We did
Next
that.
up, Samuel.
Samuel.
Oh, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Samuel.
First Samuel.
First Samuel.
Yeah, which,
We're going to be living
by the
there
way,
for a
was
while.
originally just the book of Samuel.
Right.
It was just one book, but the scrolls were so long they had to they divided it.
Kind of like
When it was translated into Greek, it was divided into two. We'll get there.
I think we have a new resident nerd, ladies
Love
and gentlemen.
it.
I'm in this. I'm studying for it right now, so I'm deep in it. But let's stop
awesome.
there so that I
Yeah.
don't give away my whole sermon for.
Well, that was a little sneak peek, you guys. But hey, listen, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're liking, comment, subscribing, share it with your friends, your people, and we will catch you next time.
Later, guys.
Yeah.